Dave Anderson here with the Fisherman magazine. It's August 18th, and these are your headlines. First up, we have confirmed reports of albies in Rhode Island and Massachusetts this week. We're also hearing the canal had its first shot of extended striped bass fishing since June. Last up, we're hearing about a lot of nice bass around the Connecticut River. Stay tuned for all that and more on this week's New England Fishing Forecast.
The fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
So before we begin, I'm just going to go through a couple news items. And, I'm getting a lot of emails about my dad, and I kind of feel like I don't need to keep talking about this in here, but like just getting so much feedback that I'm just going to give you guys a short update. I'll keep it short. He weathered the storm. Had an incredibly high fever, was very ill. And, this little hocus pocus in there. We had my sister-in-law suggested we change his meds to a different thing, and the doctors went for it, and his fever went down in 8 hours. Still very weak, and a long way to go for recovery, but right now we're just taking baby steps, and we're taking them all as good news. So thank you guys all for all the support, and I really appreciate all the prayers and all that stuff. I have to believe that it's having an impact. Moving over to the contest, that's going to end tomorrow for the rare guppy lure. And over the last week and a half or so, I've gotten a lot of entries. And so it's going to end up being a pretty good battle to see who wins this thing. So get those into me as soon as you can. You can email them at danderson@thefisherman.com, or you can text them to the number on the screen. And if you don't get anything good between now and tomorrow, now and Friday, just send them in over the weekend, and we'll put you in for the next one, because I'm going to start another one up on the next video. So let's head up into Massachusetts, and we'll start things off. I've been goading Jewkes into doing more videos, and he did another one for us this week. So without further ado, take it away, Jewkes.
Morning, Dave. Here on the Merrimack. I'm lucky I happen to work right here, so don't get to fish much here, but it is fun to keep an eye on the water. So this week's report from Plum Island in vicinity, the guys in New Hampshire on the seacoast and over in Gloucester are still doing well with plugs off the rocks. Seen some daytime bite going on, as well as the nighttime really going well. We've seen some good blues out on the ocean front of Plum Island to 32 inches. The bait guys on the sand are still still catching smaller fish with worms and clams and macks. The plug guys at night, such as myself, that pound the sand pretty hard. It's been a little bit of struggle. The water temp up here is still probably almost 70 degrees. We've been finding some fish, but nothing big. So if you stick to those rocky areas, plugging at night, you can run into some monsters. With this weather change that's in, I'll be out tonight. We'll figure out what's going on. Maybe a little tough on the sand. Wind at your face, fish at your feet, I hope. All right, Dave, that's it for this week.
The next hot spot that I'm hearing about, it just has stayed hot for well over a month now, and that's the area between Scituate and Plymouth. Just amazing bass fishing going on right now. There's a lot of bunker, or pogies, as you guys call them up there, in the area. There's some big bluefish, up into the mid-teens, and then there are bass from slot size all the way up to 30 pounds, maybe even 40, maybe even bigger. And that bite just seems to not be quitting, and now I'm starting to hear more reports from surf guys, especially after dark, fishing some of those sand beaches out there, finding some really nice fish and finding really good action. So that's definitely an area you want to keep an eye on if you're a bass fisherman in Massachusetts right now. Heading out onto the Cape, I know that the outer beaches have been steady. Not a lot of big fish, just a lot of slot-sized fishing schoolies. The SP minnow has been by far the most popular plug out there. They must be feeding on sand eels. Guys are getting them on slender soft plastics though, like the small GT eel, Ronzis, or Slegos, and that bite's holding on pretty well. Tuna bite seems to be also staying status quo, you know, from crab ledge all the way up to Stellwagen. Good numbers of mixed sizes of fish, although I know the giant fishery is now officially closed till September 1st, so you're going to want to keep an eye on that. But still plenty of wreck fish out there, and they're taking lots of different stuff. Guys are casting plugs and tins and trolling for them, fishing live bait. There's all kinds of methods of working a lot of fish in the area. Coming around down toward Monomoy, that area seems to be the hottest for bass right now, especially for boat guys. Hearing about lots of slot-sized fish, and then, you know, overs up to like 40, 41 inches. They're getting them throwing topwater, getting them throwing flies, they're getting them on soft plastics, and they're getting them snapping wire, trolling, the whole bit. There's just a lot of fish in the area, a lot of great white sharks in the area too, so you may see one of those if you're puttering around out there. And the other thing that I heard about this week is that the fluke fishing in, you know, all those sand waves out there, all those big humps of sand that create all those rips off Monomoy, that deeper water off of those is holding a lot of fluke right now, and it seems like the flutter spoon has been the main lure for that. So that's another thing you may want to keep an eye on. That's the best fluke fishing I'm hearing about in Massachusetts right now. Turning the corner into Nantucket Sound. First reports of albies from that area. Doesn't sound like there's a ton of them yet, but you know, we're about 5-6 days earlier than last year right now, at least by my count. So you know, it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning of the trickle. As far as bonito go, they still seem to be hanging out at Nantucket, not really moving into the mainland side or over to Vineyard in any kind of numbers. The only other place that I'm hearing about bonito in mass is up around the canal, and they've been real small ones. You know, I think small enough that the bass have been chasing. And coming around into Buzzards Bay, the bay right now is primed for the albies to show up. There's a ton of bait, and there's not a lot of game fish on them, so they're just kind of milling around waiting to get assaulted. And when this first wave of albies kind of materializes and comes through, you know, who knows where that bait will be, but if it sticks around, it could be a melee down there. Heading up into the canal, as I mentioned in the intro, the canal had its first, you know, good extended bite that we've seen in probably 6 to 7, if not 8 weeks. But for a more in-depth look at that, let's toss it over to East End Eddie.
Hi Dave, we'll keep your dad in our prayers. So I'm here in the east end of the canal on the mainland side. We've got a west dropping tide going by. It's going to bottom out in a couple of hours at a double minus tide. Hopefully there'll be some fish breaking in there soon. So the good news is the full moon brought the canal back to life, and there was action throughout most of the canal. So at the Bourne Bridge, there was some topwater surface action. Guys with pencil poppers caught a 43-inch and a 34-inch, amongst other fish. And then I was fishing with Joe England the other day, and his daughter decided to do, Lisa did a reconnaissance mission for us, riding up and down the canal to try to find the fish. She located some fish, called her father. We went down there, and Joe caught a 30-inch striper that he jigged off the bottom. And Bill Walsh got into some topwater action near the power plant, and was using the old standby cotton cordell, red and white, and did pretty well for himself. And Zach Baker just caught a 23-pound striper with a white fish lab. That's his favorite lure. He uses fish lab exclusively. And then that was at about 5:15 in the afternoon. And the very next day, at the same time, at the same spot, right around pole 10 on the mainland side, Kenny Nevins caught a 29-pound striper with the same lure, white fish lab. Measured out to be 48 inches. That's a 4-foot fish. That's a great catch for Kenny. Great guy. He fishes the canal almost every day. And so things are looking up on the canal. There's some bait in here. Most of it's pretty small bait. I've heard of mackerel, though I haven't seen them myself. But there's a lot of silver sides and some peanut bunker. So things are looking up, and hopefully they'll continue. So I'm going to tell you a quick story about a good fisherman. Attorney Glenn Hannington is a great guy. I've known him forever. He and I were assistant clerk magistrates in the court system together many years ago. Glenn worked at the Boston Municipal Court, and I worked in Attleboro. And so Glenn took his mother fishing in his boat just outside the canal, and there were some black sea bass. Glenn was catching a lot of fish. His mother was catching nothing on the other side of the boat. So the next time Glenn hooked a fish, he set the hook real well, and then he let some line out. And he told his mother, "Can you hold my pole? I got to take this phone call." So he handed the pole to her. Within 3 seconds, she's screaming, "I caught one. I got a fish. Wow, this is great." So she reeled it in, and she smiled all the way home. And Glenn actually pulled that trick off one more time with his mother in Florida. And his mother was a hot ticket. She used to call me the Q-tip. That was her nickname for me because I got white hair. So may she rest in peace. She went to her grave without knowing the truth. So thank God for good sons like Glenn Hannington who make the world a better place. So my tip of the week is that just talk about the telephone poles along the canal. Anybody who's been here knows that they're numbered. About every third pole is numbered and also has a street light on it. They're numbered in sequence of 5. So I don't know why they don't start at 5, but they start in the east end at pole 10, 10, 15, 20, 25, all the way to the west end at pole 375. It's pretty much the same on both sides of the canal with a few exceptions. And across from Mass Maritime at Bell Road, there's some odd numbered poles. But it's good to know what pole you're at because for a few reasons. If you keep a log of your fish and you want to write down that you caught a 30-pound striper at pole 150, or you want to tell one of your friends to meet you at pole 350 at 2 o'clock in the morning, or God forbid you have a medical emergency, you'd be able to tell first responders on the phone that you're 2 poles west of 75 or wherever you are. Just one caveat about that though. On the mainland side, there are 2 pole 50s. I don't know why, but maybe the guy who was putting up the numbers years ago had a bad day, but it goes 45, 50, then 50 again, and then 55. So if you tell one of your friends to meet you at pole 50, make sure you say which one. So until next time, be safe and catch a big one.
Last bit of saltwater news comes from the western part of Buzzards Bay, which has been good for some summertime tog. Plenty of sea bass in those deeper holes and some nice stripers around. The guy who's been putting most of those fish on the boat is, surprise, surprise, Captain Jason Colby, making runs out to Cox's. Fishing some of the local humps and bumps out there and finding a lot of fish and doing what he does. And then to wrap things up in Mass, we're going to move inland and talk to Leyve about what's going on the freshwater side of things.
Talk about a complete 180. We went from that really extreme hot weather to much cooler temps. It's starting to feel a lot like fall. And obviously that has changed patterns, especially for me. I struggled last week to find some really good fish. I caught a lot of fish, but I didn't find some really good ones. I found that where I was getting them in that when we're talking largemouth, where I was getting them in that 1 to 3 feet of water in the pads and weeds, they've actually moved out a little bit more. They seem to be a little bit more spread out and chasing bait now that, the cooler temps at night. Because now the temps, we went from having temps in 70s at night, now down to the 50s every night, which is really cooling things down. It's getting a lot of juveniles, fry and stuff moving. Even like the Connecticut River, all the shad is starting to really kind of pile up and move down towards the ocean. So everything's starting to put on a feed bag, but it's different. Blade baits were the way to go for me. Chatterbait, spinnerbait, and crankbaits. In that 4 to 6 feet of water is where I found most of my fish last week, including pike. Pike were actually in 6 to 8 feet of water in some of the deeper ledges. I didn't do any carp fishing, but it seems like they're moving around too, putting on the feedback. I did see a lot of fish up shallow feeding, not so much hanging out on the surface, getting sun, but actually active feeding. So I think over the next week, even though we're supposed to have a warm trend, I think coming, fishing, the pattern wise is going to change a little bit more into fall, start to transition into that fall bite. With that said, water should start cooling down with all these cool nights. So trout fishing should be returning soon. Same with walleye, and everything else that's out in Western Mass. I think night bites should pick up as well too. I mean, I've always really done well, especially after the moon that we just had, which actually added to last week's difficultness for me, because I struggled last week, I'll be honest. Normally I'm on to them. Last week it was such a light switch. I found myself like, what do I do? But luckily I figured them out. I didn't get any really nice fish last week, but it was productive. Definitely quantity over quantity. But that should change now as the weather pattern starts to kind of level off and we start getting these cold nights repeatedly, and then the warm days. So yeah, so if you're heading out to Western Mass this week, water levels are still extremely low. I mean, this is just crazy. Most towns have a ban on watering. I mean, it is nuts. I've never seen waters this low. You can walk across the Connecticut River in places that normally you couldn't. And the streams and most small rivers are just down to a trickle. So hopefully some of the trout have survived in some of these places that don't have really, really deep holes. Only a matter of time. We'll find out once fall comes around and I start moving around. But yeah, if I'm for me this week, I'm gonna head out. I'm gonna continue to do some largemouth bass fishing. I might do some smallmouth bass fishing, just because I know they're moving around, putting on their feedback, and pike fishing, obviously, because they are the big game in town, besides carp. So stay tuned. Catch you guys later. Be safe. All right, good fishing.
Over in Rhode Island, it seems like albie fever is taking premature hold. We've heard about fish from several locations, even shore locations, but it's still sort of a scattered bite. It's not a unified army of albies rolling in yet, but they are here. Guys are catching them, and it has definitely fired up the excitement. There's also been good numbers of bonito around, mostly on the smaller side, like up to 3 or 4 pounds. And lots of chub mackerel too. So you've definitely got the possibility for a exotic species trifecta out there. The other thing that we've seen is some other kind of strange exotic fish. We've seen some banded rudderfish this week, more triggerfish this week, and also some chicken mahi around, even pretty close to inshore. I haven't heard about one caught from somewhere like the West Wall yet, but I got a feeling we may hear about that coming up real soon. On the striper side of things, Block Island seems to have kind of fired back up with the full moon. But the odd thing about it is it sounds like there's a lot more slot fish out there, which is not typical. So you've got dinosaurs and you got slots. Guys are getting them on, all the same stuff, like the big rubbers, live eels, of course, and messing around at first and last light with top waters, we're finding some fish as well. And the flutter spoon fish also. For a deeper dive on what's going on around Block and heading up toward Point Judith, let's toss it over to John Lee from JL Charters.
Hey Dave, John Lee, JL Charters. This week has been a good week for bottom fishing. That's mostly what we've done. We had a couple of good fluke days inshore in about 65 to 75 feet of water. The tides this past week were what I think were unusually strong. So we were fishing more lead than I would like to fish. Talking with other fishermen, the strong currents threw the bite off, and we're kind of coming out of that now. So the bite should get easier, maybe not better, but easier. And anyway, we had a good trip to the island yesterday for stripers and blues. We got some big bass. That was my first trip out there in maybe 5 days. And we had some northeast wind, and that has had an impact. The weather's been kind of unusual for August. It almost feels like mid-September. Anyway, I'll be making some umbrella rigs up for the fall. Dyed my surgical tubing. Been playing around with different dyes. Not too impressed yet with what I've done, but live and learn. And I'll talk to you next week. Have a good one.
2, 3. On the fluke side of things, the beaches, South County beaches have been kind of meh. they're producing some fish, they're having some good days and some bad days, but it's just not coming together like what we typically see out there. Sometimes it seems like it's gonna get a couple days in a row where things are looking a little bit better and then it tapers off again. So if you're fishing Rhody and you're looking for fluke, I'd be making the long ride out to the windmills or out to the east grounds. That seems to be the area where most of the action is happening. Sea bass wise, you're going to want to fish in 70 plus feet of water, and the bite's been pretty good. Although I have been hearing guys are picking through more shorts lately. And then the last thing that I've been hearing about in Rhody is a surprising number of blackfish are being caught in fairly shallow water, considering the water temperature. 20 to 30 feet of water. I've got some friends that have been spear fishing and they're seeing some really nice fish doing shore dives. They're just swimming out 15, 20 feet of water and finding some really nice fish. So that's another option if you want to top the cooler off this week in Rhody. The last thing, actually, I did have one more thing, and that's the breachaways. They're still holding up very well. So are the back ponds. Some nice bass running through there. They seem to be happy and healthy and not really worried about the warm water. A lot of bait kind of gathering in that area, and that seems to be what's fueling the bite. Haven't heard of anything gigantic, but plenty of slots and decent numbers of oversized fish. So that area is looking good, and seems to be it's going to keep looking good. So as we head into the fall, like today, feels very fall-like, and it might inspire a little more action in that area. So check that out. Over in Connecticut, that crazy bluefish action that was happening in the race cooled off. Could be a side effect of the really strong moon tides we had last week, or who knows. Fish got fins; they go where they want. But that has cooled off. There's still some bass in the area, definitely some porgies in the area if you want to fish the slower tides. But the best place for bass right now is definitely around the Connecticut River, basically from Black Point over to like Duck Island, that area. That seems to be the hot zone, and there's been some really nice ones. A lot of slot-sized fish, a lot of fish in the 40-inch class, but there's been some really big fish. Some fish up over 50 inches taken, and that's boat, shore, and kayak. So action's looking good over there. One guy that we know has always got his finger on the pulse of that region is Captain Mike Roy, Real Cash Charters.
Hey, what's up, guys? This week's Fisherman Report, first thing you're going to notice is yesterday and today felt like September a bit. We had a northeast wind today and projecting northwest wind tomorrow. So not quite fall fishing yet, but I expect that to transition by the end of the month. We did see some tinker mackerel. We were able to actually accidentally catch a few, and we saw big gator blues chasing them. The bluefish that we're catching, we're using the old school Avid diamond jigs, and the Shimano current 100 gram and 120 gram jig has been working really well. And there are some big gator blues out there in the deep areas like the race. As far as striped bass fishing goes, we're still seeing some really nice quality size striped bass on the deeper reefs. And again, that's mostly on live bait. Not a lot of topwater yet, but that will probably change shortly. Bottom fishing, from what I understand, it seems like the guys making the run across New York are doing a bit better on fluke and sea bass. And as far as funny fish goes, some people start to get that on their mind. In my opinion, still too early in my areas, but I heard rumors way east, Nantucket, Vineyard, Newport, that they're starting to see some bonita there, which typically this is the time of year when they start to see them there, and probably looking at least a few more weeks before we get them into Long Island Sound. But you never know, we may have some by the end of the month. So that's all I have for you. Good luck.
And as we head west from there, bass bites are pretty good too. Southwest Reef, 6 Mile, a lot of slot fish in that area. And the guys are getting them on a variety of methods, but trolling the tube and worm seems to be working extremely well up along the rocks in that area. But also first and last light, they're finding fish on top. Guys are throwing little spooks and little poppers and getting some nice fish. And also little 6-inch soft plastics. Lots of slot fish, like I said. And a few blues in that area, but nothing crazy. Heading west from there, Max must be out on the boat today. He told me he doesn't have time to shoot the video, but he gave me a couple talking points. He said there's a lot of big bluefish in the Western Sound right now. And the way you're going to find them is to fish around the bunker schools. You can snag and drop, or you can throw big plugs. They're getting some really big bluefish, up to 15 size. with the WICC Greatest Bluefish Tournament on Earth coming up, that might be an idea you want to keep an area you want to keep an eye on. He said the bass fishing's been best first and last light or overnight, but he said, definitely slowed down from the epic blitzes and bites of a few weeks ago, so you're gonna have to grind it out a little bit to find those fish there. He also said there's been a major influx of small bait out that way, and that has fired up the fluke fishing, so they're getting fluke in like 20 to 30 feet of water, and the bite, still a lot of smaller fish, still a lot of shorts, but the bite's been better, and they're catching more keepers, so it's another area if you're looking for flatfish you may want to go to, but really the best area right now is a long ride from the Western Sound, but from Montauk round to the south side of Montauk seems to be the area where most of the better fluke are coming from regionally. Last up for the local report, I'm going to toss it over to Rowan Lytle and Captain Noah Johnson for a little look at some of the underutilized fisheries we have here in Nantucket.
Hey everybody, Noah and I are out here tonight on the leeward side of a point. It's a honking east wind at the moment. We're out fishing for dogfish at the moment. Should be able to see through it there through Noah's headlamp. We're catching some small ones right now just after sunset. Hopefully we'll get us some really big ones. Obviously a lot of people don't like fishing for dogfish, but they're actually fantastic table fare. They're a little intimidating to clean, but there's plenty of YouTube videos out there, and a lot of people don't realize this, but in Europe a lot of the time when you order fish and chips you're eating dogfish. So that's their replacement for cod in places where the fishery for cod's diminished so much. So dogfish, quite a bit of fun, especially when you're not on a party boat with a lot of lines to tangle up. Great table fare. You should get out and try it. Just find some calm water, throw some chunks of bunker or anything else like that, and you'll get on them. Good luck, everybody.
And finally, we'll take a short flight down to Costa Rica and hear what's going on at Marina Pez Vela.
Hey there guys, and welcome to the Marina Pez Vela here in Costa Rica. Right now we got a great blue marlin bite going on. Just in the last week there's been some incredible blue marlin fishing right here, about 30 to 40 miles offshore. Some of the boats getting into 2, 3, 4 marlin per day when they can find the fish. Just insane fishing. We've had a really good sailfish bite from time to time. Sometimes bites keep popping up and the guys are getting on some good numbers of sailfish too. Yellowfin tuna bite has been wide open on some days, as well as mahi-mahi closer to shore, around about 10 to 15 miles out, and some really nice wahoo fishing over the offshore humps. Would love to see you guys down here very soon. Our peak season is November through April. Get booking those tickets, guys, and hope to see you in Costa Rica. Back over to you.
And that's what I have for you guys in the reports this week. I hope you're going to find them useful. And as I always say, head over to the website, check out what we got going on. If you're not a subscriber, it's the best $30 you can spend in fishing. You get reports from the whole region, from Delaware all the way up to Maine. You get articles and videos and all kinds of other stuff that covers that exact same area and covers every species, freshwater, saltwater, everything in between, fly fishing, surf fishing, boat fishing, kayak fishing, stand-up paddleboard. It's all covered. Come on over and check us out. But at the very least, if you're still not interested, give us a like and subscribe here on YouTube and hit that little bell thing down there so you get a notification every time we post something new. Appreciate you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.